A black man wearing a Make America Great Again hat harassed and threatened at the Cheesecake Factory for wearing the hat. The bullies threatening him were employees of the Cheesecake Factory. Eugenie or Joseph, a 22-year-old man, was dining with his family on Mother's Day wearing the MAGA hat when an employee pointed him out and began to mock him for being a black man who supported President Donald Trump. Other employees then joined in the bullying, saying they wanted to punch Joseph in the face, calling him the N-word, surrounding his table, clenching their fists as if to signal that they wanted to fight him, and screaming and booing him as he returned from the bathroom. One witness reported, according to the Daily Wire, that an employee said, quote, "I'm going to knock his head in so hard his hat's going to come off." Meanwhile, the Cheesecake Factory responded only by saying they are conducting an investigation. They then suspended the employee. But my question is, where is the media here? Where is the NAACP? Where's the ACLU? Where are the liberals who went bananas when two black men were arrested in Starbucks for violating Starbucks policy? Oh, that's right. When it's a black man who supports Donald Trump, the media is silent. It's funny, isn't it, how all white people are racist when two black men are arrested in Starbucks, but when a black man wearing a MAGA hat is harassed and threatened in a Cheesecake Factory, the media is just like, but Ivanka Trump is a ghoul. Joining me now to break this down from the Daily Signal, Ginny Montalbano. Ginny, good to see you. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, Ginny, after this happened, this is the statement the Cheesecake Factory put out. They said, quote, oh, this is from their senior director of public relations, by the way. She says, no guest should ever feel unwelcomed in one of our restaurants, and we are taking this matter very seriously. Upon learning of this incident, we immediately apologized to the guests in person. We are conducting an investigation and will take the appropriate corrective action. Ginny, the only action they took is they suspended the employee. Is that enough?
No, absolutely not. This is mortifying on so many levels, chiefly, which is what you already touched on, these were employees. So it's not like a customer on a customer type of situation. This was a group of employees, and they engaged in a sort of mob mentality against this black man who was wearing a MAGA hat in support of President Trump. And I think what's so sad about this is that this type of behavior doesn't lead or engage in substantive policy debates.
No, it doesn't at all. I mean, one of the employees actually said, I'm going to knock his head in so hard that his hat's going to come off. And this disturbed, by the way, other customers of the Cheesecake Factory who were also there dining with their families on Mother's Day. The reports say that this type of behavior, this harassment, caused a young girl who was sitting nearby to start crying, and an old woman had to take her medication on the spot right there in the Cheesecake Factory to calm herself down. The employee at that very time was just sent home for this. But the contrast to me, Ginny, when we look at the response from the public, from liberals, from the media, versus their response, several weeks ago after that incident at Starbucks, that contrast is quite stark.
It's extremely stark, but not altogether unsurprising. Anytime there's a narrative that does not fit the mainstream media, they collectively look away. And I saw this firsthand today as I was preparing for this. I reached out to friends and family for their take, and I would say 90% of them hadn't heard a single thing about this. So here you have a black man supporting our president. Clearly, that does not fit the typical narrative that the mainstream media would like to have. So they've collectively shunned it for the most part.
Right. So their solution is, first of all, you shame black Americans into voting for anybody running against Donald Trump. Shame them into voting liberals. And if they don't, then you collectively surround them as a mob, threaten violence against them. If they don't toe the line, vote because of their skin color, because of the way liberals think they should vote because of their skin color, instead of voting the way that they believe preserves their liberty and security. It's horrifying.
It is, and let's imagine for a moment that this had been a couple years ago and this had been a black man wearing a Hope and Change hat. You would have most definitely seen very, very, very different circumstances. And I think that it's important to remember to not get baited by identity politics, because it truly takes away from the facts and the numbers and the great achievements that President Trump has secured both domestically and in foreign policy for all Americans.
Right. No, you're absolutely right here. I do want to take a quick look at what exactly happened, how the Starbucks situation was handled. So after these two men were arrested in Starbucks because they were loitering, the cafe manager said they asked to use the bathroom, but they hadn't bought anything. At the time, that was against Starbucks policy. I think most people were aware that that's against Starbucks policy to use the bathroom if you haven't bought anything.
Yes.
This woman had been harassed by loiterers in her cafe before. One of them had actually physically chased her around. So when she asked these gentlemen to leave after she told them no, they couldn't use the bathroom if they didn't buy anything, she called the police and said, listen, two men won't leave the premises after I asked them. The police came. They did not cooperate with the police, so the police arrested them. Fast forward, just a couple days, and Starbucks institutes this policy where they're going to take an entire half day off for implicit bias training, basically saying not only was this situation only about race and not about following policy and disagreeing with the police or being disagreeable to the police, but we are now going to insinuate that every employee at Starbucks must have some sort of racial animosity towards black people. I don't see any kind of response from the Cheesecake Factory that would be equitable to what Starbucks did in response to that incident.
Yeah, clearly there is a double standard, and you're seeing it firsthand. As you said, with the Starbucks incident, it was all over the news. Everyone was talking about it. Twitter blew up. With the Cheesecake Factory, they released a little statement saying, well, we sent the employee home. That's it. That's all they did. So clearly there's a double standard. It's very hypocritical and very sad because they're just contributing to a larger problem, and they're not engaging in a discussion that could be pretty substantive.
Right. And I'm not one to call for people to be fired for their jobs very often. I think that's overused a bit, but the fact that this employee was only suspended after being sent home that day, again, it doesn't seem to be an equitable response. And we haven't heard anything either, Ginny, from the NAACP, from the ACLU, for any of these individual rights and liberties types of organizations that turned out en masse for the Starbucks incident. None. No liberal politician, none of these groups, not a word.
Right, we're a couple days in and we've heard absolutely nothing, and unfortunately I don't think we will unless more news sites begin to cover this and point out the hypocrisy, but then they'll be forced to say something, so it's not as genuine and it is clearly hypocritical.
It is. I mean, the reason we cover this is, first of all, we want to stand up for this guy. I mean, it doesn't matter his skin color. He was harassed for his political views while he was out to dinner for Mother's Day. That's a mob of bullies that are picking on him. He has our full support. But it also points out the fact that the left claims that President Trump is a bully. They claim that his hateful rhetoric causes, hate crimes, yet when it's perpetrated by their own side, I mean, this was a mob of bullies, they won't call it out because they're like, well, the guy brought it on himself because he's black and he voted for Trump. What does he expect?
Exactly. They feel like he deserves it
Right.
for some reason, when in fact, he was just there, like you said, Mother's Day, enjoying dinner with his girlfriend and her family. He didn't look for trouble. Instead, the employees at this Cheesecake Factory went up looking for a problem, and some of them even threatened physical violence. What a fiasco, and it's very, very sad for him, and hopefully more of the media will begin to cover this.
Right, hopefully, and that's what we're doing too to bring attention to this. Ginny, thanks so much for being on the show. I appreciate it.